I call the September 12th meeting of the Los Gatos Planning Commission to order, and we'll wait for everyone to find their seats. Thank you. I'm Joanne Telesford. I'm chairman of the Planning Commission, and I and my fellow commissioners welcome you here tonight. The Planning Commission is composed of citizens appointed by the Town Council, and we review planning and development issues, and we make decisions and recommendations to the Town Council regarding land use matters, both commercial and residential. And those decisions are based on our general plan and other zoning policies that we have here in town. As we hear discussion tonight, we will consider each of those policies and make decisions that reflect the high quality of standard and life we enjoy here in Los Gatos. With that, I'd like to ask Mr. Suda to take roll.
Commissioner Michucci is absent. Commissioner Bourgeois?
Here.
Commissioner Rice?
Here.
Commissioner Sayoc?
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell? Vice Chair Kane?
Is presently absent. I didn't expect that.
And Chair Telesford.
Here. Thank you. And I will ask, well, I guess I will. I will lead you in a flag salute. Everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Okay, to get started, we're going to be looking for approval of minutes, commissioners, but at the moment I have a speaker card in the public forum. And while you're getting to the podium, Citizen Ray, I would like to ask people to please, if you have a cell phone, would you please silence it in any manner that you can? And if you want to speak tonight, there are speaker cards in front of you, and if you would fill these out and then hand it to Mr. Parsons over to my extreme left, it gives the town a way to create a record of who did speak for in front of the Planning Commission tonight. Yes, Citizen Ray.
Okay. Yes, Madam Chairman. I wanted to correct the minutes, if I may. The minutes state that under verbal communication, I was critical of a decision of the Planning Commission relative to the Millrise Avenue. Okay. That, unfortunately, is not a correct comment. What I said was I was giving some constructive criticism to an individual commissioner only. The Planning Commission did, in my opinion, the absolute right thing on the Hillrise matter. So I'd like the minutes to be clarified to show exactly what I've just said. Thank you.
Okay, we will make that augmentation to the minutes, and I don't think it needs to come back to us, does it? No. We'll certainly put that in. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, I would like to entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes with the aforementioned change.
Okay,
Second.
Commissioner Bourgeois, and seconded by Commissioner Rice. All in favor?
Aye.
All against? None. Okay, passes. We have 3 desk items, by the way, Commissioners. 2 are for item number 2, and 1 is for item number 1, and that is this pamphlet. Did you all receive it? Okay, thank you. And
I believe that's item 2, not item 1.
Is that item 2? I'm sorry. You're
Item
right.
1's
It is,
requested
yes,
continuance.
exactly. Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Yes, it's for item 2, and so we'll have a chance to, I'll give you a chance when those items come up to review them. Okay, so written communications, don't have any, and requested continuances is item number 1. But before we do that, go on to that, subcommittee reports, and who would like to speak on that? I think we had 1 subcommittee meeting this month, and that was for the Conceptual Development Advisory Committee. Commissioner Rice.
CDAC met this afternoon, reviewed 2 projects. One is at the corner or corners of Los Gatos Boulevard, Samaritan Drive, and National Avenue. It's actually 3 parcels, contemplating merging them into one in construction of a new medical office complex. And we gave the developer owner some guidance on that, and I'm sure we'll be seeing that at the Planning Commission in the future. The other project is the lot split at Verizon, 930 University Avenue, and the proposal is to put a storage facility on the new lot. And again, there was guidance and input given to the developer, and I think we'll probably be hearing more on that one shortly as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions, Commissioners? Okay. Seeing none, we can move on. It's time for verbal communications, and as an audience, you do have a chance to speak. And if you do, like I said, fill out a card. You'll have 3 minutes. Although at this time, in the verbal communications, if you speak on anything, the commission actually is, we're forbidden to speak or answer or discuss what you do bring up. And in that sense, I do have Citizen Ray. I know. What was I thinking? I know. Would you like to get up now? Thank you.
You know, Madam Chairman, that's an interesting possibility. Maybe I should put my name in again. Particularly now that, I've been on record with 2 Sig Heils. Wasn't that fantastic? Adolf Hitler went crazy with 3. And so, Madam Chairman, you are the recipient of 2 Sig Heils in one meeting. Wow. Wow. We used to call, and the Germans called Hitler der Führer, the leader. And I don't know, maybe we have a Die Führenden, a leader in Los Gatos, possibly. But seriously, let me go to a more serious matter, okay? I just took a look at the back page of the Metro, Silicon Valley's newspaper, okay? And I brought a copy in to submit as evidence for you. There's a photograph here of an ad from the Palo Alto store of American Apparel. Doesn't that name ring a bell with you? Okay. This is entitled High-Waisted Hot Short, and I'm going to give it for your inspection, okay, and submit it as evidence of why the Planning Commission did the right thing when you rejected American Apparel for Los Gatos. Okay? If you would pass that along to the Planning Commissioners, I'd appreciate it. Some of you may blush, but I'll understand. Oh, yeah. The biggest issue in town now for many of us is the issue of the lack of sport fields for the kids in this community. Morgan Hill has a fantastic complex. Santa Clara has a fantastic complex. Saratoga has all kinds of soccer fields for the kids. Aptos, same thing. All around the South Bay, the communities have done their bit to serve the youth, okay, except Los Gatos. And now we have this wonderful windfall of 13.5 acres. 8.5 acres are almost flat. And we, the people of Los Gatos who care about the kids, want to see that develop for the kids.
Thank you.
Period.
Thank you, Citizen Ray.
Yes, indeed. Happy to be here to serve the kids.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, I don't have any other cards. for the public forum. So we have nothing on the consent calendar, but we do have a continued public hearing, and I'll need a motion on that, and that's for continuance for 21 Mariposa Avenue.
I move to continue item 1 to September 26th, and that's a minor residential application, MR-06-30.
Fine, thank you. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rice. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Okay, motion carries to continue 21 Mariposa Avenue. All right, that'll bring us right up to new public hearings, and that's item number 2 on the agenda. And this is for 50 University Avenue, Suite 240. It's a conditional use permit, U-07-153, requesting approval of a conditional use permit for a formula store, Papyrus, within the Old Town Shopping Center on property zone C2, PD, LHP, APN 529-02-044. Property owner is Federal Realty Investment Trust, and the applicant is Papyrus. And before we open the public hearing, Commissioners, if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask it. Or, Mr. Suter, do you want to make your report first?
Just a very brief introduction. Papyrus previously existed in the Old Town Shopping Center in the building that runs perpendicular to University, and that space was adjacent to White House Black Market. In March of this year, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit that allowed White House Black Market to expand into that 1,259 square foot space formerly occupied by Papyrus. Papyrus relocated to another vacant space within the Old Town Shopping Center, and staff erroneously issued a business license for them to occupy that space without them having secured the CUP prior to their occupancy. Once the applicant was notified of the error, they did file the required application for the conditional use permit. As the staff report indicates, there are no changes to the parking demand or the traffic generation rates with approval of this conditional use permit, and the percentage of formula stores will be at 15% within the central business district with Papyrus. And I can answer any questions.
I do have a question to start with, and then Commissioner Bourgeois. And that question is, we have a correspondence. This is on page 4 of the staff report. And the town received an email from a concerned citizen regarding the Gap, which is located within the Old Town Shopping Centers. And I was wondering if there was an update on that, if you might want to tell us what that was about.
Yes, staff has spent about 3 or 4 weeks now going through the archives of the multitude of hearings. We did track down that CUP on the architecture and site application. So there is a condition that prevents the stores, specifically the Gap, from frosting those rear windows that are face onto the town's parking lot. So our code compliance officer has now completed that research, identified the condition of approval, and is contacting the Gap to enforce those conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Commissioner Bourgeois?
Thank you. I had 2 questions. That was one of them.
Okay.
Secondly, do you know that, maybe I should ask the applicant, but do you know the date of when they actually started operating Papyrus store? Like when the business license was?
We signed the business license in May of this year.
May. And the White House Black Market decision was, that's a March Planning Commission, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. Any other questions, Commissioners? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing and call up the applicant, who is Papyrus. And did you fill out a card? You may fill it out after you speak and present, but would you please, when you approach the podium, state your name, address, and adjust the mic so that we can hear you better. Thank you. And then remain at the podium in case we have questions.
It's Lisa Ono and Sean Paula for Papyrus. The address is 50 University Avenue, space B240. And I'm sorry, was there something else I was supposed to add?
I think you did it.
Oh, okay. Basically, I think the report is pretty much conclusive of what we were going to present this evening. The only thing that we wanted to stress is that we have been a successful retailer in the Los Gatos community since 1999. We were unaware of the formula retail requirement at the time because we were, before that was actually put into place. So at the time that our landlord actually had done some shifting of their tenants, we were unaware of it, and we did apply in May for our business for our occupancy, and we did receive it. It wasn't until we actually were in our sign permit process that we were notified that it was in error. So as soon as we were notified, we immediately turned in all of the requirements for the CUP, and we've been waiting since then.
Commissioner Bourgeois, did you have a question? Oh, you don't? Okay.
The only other thing I have to add is that because we have been a successful retailer in the community, we are very active and we participate, and we have different activities in which we do consider the town of Los Gatos a partner in many of the things that we do. So although we are considered a former retailer, we do take part in the community of Los Gatos.
Thank you. Can you, I have a question. Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question then. When you say you participate with the town of Los Gatos in fundraising or corporate, whatever events, can you just remind me of what those are?
Sure. One of our biggest community partnerships that we do it actually at a corporate level, and it's called EarthShare. And what we do is all of our employees have the option of partnering with charities either in their community or globally, nationally, and it's basically to preserve or further promote green. So what we do is they are able to choose different charities or organizations within the community, and we partner, and we also give corporate sponsorship towards that. So I would say that globally, that's the largest thing that we do. We also look at any sort of donations to schools and local organizations that may be looking for something that we offer.
And has that happened in the past?
Yes, it has happened in the
With our
past.
schools here I'm just looking for something specific.
We tend to donate goods that will help promote the art of writing. So to educate the elementary school students immediately on the art of writing, we donated several journals types to over hundreds to elementary schools locally. I think the other thing that hasn't been outlined as well is there hasn't been a year that we've missed the AIDS Walk for San Francisco, but Los Gatos, our employees from Los Gatos themselves actually raised over $7,000 with not only our store manager from Los Gatos, but we paired up with the Gap, Banana Republic, Sur La Table, and we funded the AIDS Walk of $7,000, which represented just Los Gatos. So it did show a community spirit from store managers, which started at Papyrus, but spread throughout the other formula retail and locally owned businesses to help support that cause.
Thank you. Commissioner Bourgeois.
Thank you. So you've been in your new location 3 months, 4 months, somewhere in there. You know, if you'll indulge me just for a second, at our previous, when we talked about the White House Black Market expansion into your former space, we had quite a bit of discussion about that shopping center. I'm just curious, maybe it's too soon to tell, but have you noticed with kind of a shift in composition and position in that corner, have you noticed any difference in your foot traffic, in your business, in your sales? Has there been any change?
It's hard to relate it to our new spot, but signage in itself has been quite difficult. Our sales trend in that location is down 55%. So it's really important for us to get the signage back up because most of our customers think we've actually exited the environment. I don't know if that's necessarily denoted because White House Black Market is in our former spot. I think it's more the visibility of the brand and the fact that we couldn't apply for the permit for signage until we actually received approval from this board.
Okay, any other questions? None. All right, thank you very much, and I do have a speaker card on this.
Okay.
So we'll call you back up in just a few minutes. And I have Mr. Larry Arzi.
Good evening. You know, I'm not here to tell you that Old Town forced out the Indian store so they can bring in another high-paying national. Protecting our small businesses would not fly with council. I'm not here to tell you that another national will add to the intensification of the CBD against the wishes of the community or the general plan. I'm not here to tell you that the addition of another national would create more infrastructure, parking problems such as traffic and parking. I'm not here to tell you that the return of Papyrus will threaten out of the envelopes business on Santa Cruz Avenue. None of these are grounds for denial. I am here to point out that this applicant will make Old Town 100% CUP, nationals, and restaurant uses. None of this was expected. This was never expected to happen. By doing this, Old Town has our staff has pointed out hotspots, and this is just adding to the hotspot. Council has made it clear that they would reverse a denial on this point as well. I am here also to point out that the applicant is Old Town, not Papyrus. Remember that. That's very important. And you must look to Old Town for fulfilling any CUP requirements. On this issue, Old Town has been negligent, and for the reason you should deny Old Town application for yet another national retailer. For this reason. I have been trying since April, working with staff to get Old Town to meet the obligations of GAP's use permit. For about a year now, GAP ceased to comply with the CUP requirements that their windows facing the parking lot and the businesses on Santa Cruz Avenue be showroom windows with a minimum of posters only. We went to considerable effort to integrate the national chain stores into the historical business district. If the GAP is unwilling now to comply, then it's Old Town's obligation to fulfill the requirements, even if they have to keep up the windows themselves. In the meantime, until Old Town fulfills its obligation, they're the applicant. Remember that. I respectfully request you deny the application. At a minimum, please make it a condition of this application. At the most, please add some sort of sanctions in the future if they do this again, such as requiring Old Town to reapply for a use permit for a new national if and when the GAP vacates.
Thank you, Mr. Arzi. Do we have any other, we have a question from Commissioner Rice.
Well, I'm going to direct it to staff because my paperwork says the applicant is Papyrus. The property owner is Old Town. Am I misunderstanding?
That is correct. The applicant is Papyrus. The property owner is Old Town.
Thank you.
Does that clear that up?
No, the benefit is for Old Town, not the applicant. The use permit stays with the applicant. The applicant is applying.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Arzi.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'd like to have no more speaker cards, but I would like to call the applicant back up. Would you like to have a closing remark, a rebuttal, or add anything we haven't heard?
Go ahead.
I think the important part of this is that our community that we're in, Los Gatos, is something that we've been a part of for over 10 years. And our business is quite unique in this area that we do touch a lot of families with our custom printing business. We start with the baby announcements and go to the graduation announcements and then help them with their wedding. So it's not just a profit business for Papyrus, but more to really connect with the art of writing and custom printing in families. So given the fact that we have made quite a community connection over the last 10 years, it would be a shame to get rid of that, not only from a mistake, but also the fact that, Papyrus is definitely a retailer that brings a unique selection to this customer base in Los Gatos. And we want to be able to supply this customer base with those unique selections that we supply to over 184 other stores throughout the country. I think it's important for us that although we're considered a formula retailer, our stores are ran as if they're mom and pop. our store managers run those as if they own them themselves. So I just want to make sure that we make that distinction. On paper, we may be a formula retail, but when you're actually in our environment, our customers don't feel that.
Thank you very much. What, do I have any questions from Commissioner? I don't. I do have a question, though, regarding the posters and windows and what your storefront looks like, because the previous speaker did bring that up. Can you comment on how you do your store windows?
Sure. Everything's done nationally so that we have one brand message. In our posters, in Los Gatos in particular, we actually do two posters, a window A and window B, and they all are based on the traffic drivers of that time frame. We're going to change that methodology moving into 2008 to more of a color story because that's the trend of retail in general. So, but we still will have two posters, one in window A and one in window B. We definitely want to make sure from a customer standpoint that they get the experience the minute they see our front windows. I agree, I walk by the Gap store, so it is, having worked for the Gap for 9 years, not to Gap standard. But that's something that we wouldn't stand for, and I think we need to make the distinction between the fact that even though we're both formula retailers, we definitely have a higher standard of execution, and it would be a shame to lump that together just because of the fact that Gap isn't applying with something that they should be.
I have a question. When you were in the other space, and I came by the windows and saw, I believe that many times you had your, whatever it was you were selling in the windows. So when you say you have a poster in the window, can you explain that? Is it just the poster alone?
From a marketing standpoint, we have backdrops, which is window A and window B posters, but then you also have the key items that accompany that poster. There's no more than 6 items per window. That's a standard across the company. The point of that is to make the customer choice very distinct on what we're advertising for that time frame. But the benefit also is not to have a cluttered window storefront that the customer looks as if it wasn't intentional. So you're correct. There would be no more than 6 items in the front window.
Okay, thank you. No other questions? Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioners, I will turn this over. Oh, I'm going to close the public hearing on this. Thank you for reminding me. Commissioner Kane, and welcome. Yes, would the record show, please, that Commissioner Kane did come in, and I've forgotten what time it was, but thank you very much. Commissioner Kane has a question. Yes.
Well, I apologize for my tardiness, but to the chairperson and/or staff, how does that affect my ability to contribute on this case?
Well, go ahead and answer it now.
Given that you entered midstream during the application, I would recommend that you recuse yourself from this item.
Okay, well, with the chair's permission, I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Does that mean recuse totally out of the room, or can Michael stay here? Well, we're used to recusals being removed.
Put a partial recusement where I present my arguments and questions, and then just don't. No, I'm sorry. Do you want me to leave the room?
It's, I mean,
That
he
would
doesn't
be
have
best
to.
if you
but
leave the room,
I'm
yes.
going to leave the room.
Okay, we'll see you back.
Thanks for coming, though.
Okay, so I've closed the public hearing. I'd like to turn this over to questions for staff, discussion from commission members, or motion. Commissioner Bourgeois.
I'd like to start out by saying that I agree with some of the comments of Mr. Arzi, and I too am concerned that Old Town is all formula retail, which is the reason why I voted against the expansion of Black House White Market. In my opinion, that was the time to make the stand, not now. I think Papyrus has been a good tenant in town. They've been a good solid business in Old Town for a decade almost, and they're basically moving next door. I don't see how we can find anything but to support this application. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve conditional use permit for formula retail store within the Old Town Shopping Center, zone C2 PD LHP. The applicant is Papyrus. I'll make the findings that this is categorically exempt under section 15301 of CEQA, and as required by section 2920-190 of the town code, that I find based on the evidence submitted at this hearing that the proposed use of this property is desirable for the public convenience. I think this store actually provides the only diversity of retail in Old Town. Everything else is women's apparel. That will not impair the integrity of the zone. It's not detrimental to public health or safety or welfare, and it's in harmony with the various elements of the general plan for the sole reason that I stated earlier, they're an existing successful business in Old Town. And also make the finding, as required by Section 4B of the redevelopment plan, that it meets the use set forth in the town's general plan, and this will be subject to the conditions for approval in our staff report.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner O'Donnell seconds the motion. And yes, we're going to call for discussion. Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
The point about the gap, I think, is unrelated to this, but I want to try to clarify that because there's been Mr. Arzi said the applicant is Old Town. That is not what our papers in front of us say. Clearly, the owner has to consent to an application by an applicant, but that doesn't make the owner the applicant. So I'm really directing my question to council because, as I understand it, we are now moving to enforce the condition against the gap, which is, in essence, what Mr. Arzi wanted. I don't see how we condition this applicant to do something over which it has no control, namely the gap, but perhaps Mr. Korb could shed some light on that.
Well, let me just say that I agree with you. That answers the question.
Thank you.
Well, moving along. Do we have any other discussion on this? If we could just remember to silence our cell phones. Thank you. I do have something to say, and I'd like this to be on the record. And I really am sorry to have to say this because I have nothing against Papyrus at all. And I think people have used your store, and I think you've been successful when you were there. Really what I have to talk about, though, is that I'm sorry that we didn't really have a chance to review this application in its entirety at the time that we should have. That was really a loss to us. And I have to say this because Papyrus was then actually displacing a locally owned store, which I was regretfully sorry to see that leave the Old Town Shopping Center. I think when people come to our town, they not only expect to have a good time here and have wonderful restaurants, and they do expect to see, some of our national brands, and that's a good thing. But they also expect some diversity. And with the loss of this store at Old Town, we have now lost the chance to capture that back again. And so with that, I have a hard time. I will support this motion, but I just needed to say that for the record. I would like to have council give us maybe some more of their beliefs about our formula retail policy, because I believe we are perhaps losing some criteria for judging it. But anyway, that's my comment. It doesn't really need another discussion. Did you have something to add?
I have
Commissioner
a
O'Donnell?
question. I don't know. It's nothing else on the record that you've just said. In other words, my understanding is they have moved a block away. It's not clear to me why they moved. It's not clear to me whether their move was a good thing for them. Certainly their exposure seems better there. Not clear to me at all that it's not better for their business. You've now stated some things that are not on the record, and if so, if you have some knowledge of those things, I'd appreciate it if you advised us where you got the knowledge. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, what I'm saying is we didn't have well, I'm sorry you don't understand it. I'll try to say it again.
I don't know where it came from.
It came from the fact that there was a locally owned business there, and if because of a technicality, the commission was not able to review it as an application for a CUP in a non-formula space at Old Town. That's what I'm talking about. So, yes, Commissioner Rice.
You're now confusing me, too.
Okay.
The store you're referring to moved half a block away. It's still in town.
That's
you
fine,
are
I'm
reviewing
happy.
the CUP on this right now.
Oh, well, we are, but I think we could have had this is a store that's already operating in a space. It seems like the pressure is a little different in the review of this. That's all.
Okay, I'll let that go. Thank you.
Anyway, so with that, I'll call for the question. Okay, all in favor of this approving the CUP?
Aye.
And opposed? 1, nay. Okay,
Appeal rights.
yes. appeal.
Anyone dissatisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission may appeal the decision to the Town Council. The appeal must be filed within 10 days. It must be filed upstairs in the clerk's office. There is a fee for filing an appeal.
Okay, Commissioners. Commissioner Kane, welcome back.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Bourgeois.
thank you. I own a condo and live in the complex immediately adjacent to this property, so I'll be recusing myself from item 3.
All right, so thank you very much. Item number 3 is 55 Los Gatos Saratoga Road. It's a plan development application, PD-07-01, negative declaration, ND-07-02, requesting approval of a planned development to renovate an existing motel, to convert a portion of the hotel to retail, and to construct new retail space on property zone commercial highway. No significant environmental impacts have been identified as a result of this project, and a mitigated negative declaration is recommended. APN 529-23-007. Property owner and applicant is 55 Partners, LLC. And with that, Ms. Davis, I believe, is going to introduce this. And will you make comments about the parking study as well in your presentation?
Yes, I have a few, and hopefully it'll clarify it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is a plan development application that includes renovation of an existing motel, the Los Gatos Motor Inn, and addition of a 9,000 square foot commercial building that's intended for retail and restaurant uses. The Planning Commission is a recommending body to the Town Council, as this application involves a zone change in the form of adding a PD overlay to the existing CH zone. The project site is located on the northeast corner of Alberto Way and Los Gatos Saratoga Road, or Highway 9, across from the Los Gatos Lodge and just east of the Highway 17, Highway 9 interchange. The motel renovation includes conversion of 2,300 square feet to office space, relocation of the lobby to the middle of the building, which is at the rear of the site, and some exterior upgrades, as well as increasing the landscaping and redoing the parking lot. The number of rooms will be reduced from 60 to 57 under the proposal. The commercial building is located near the corner of Los Gatos Saratoga Road and Alberto Way, and has been pushed to within 1 foot of the front and side property lines in an effort to provide some visibility from the street frontages. This site is sitting down in a hole. It's approximately 7 feet lower than the street level. 2 other exceptions are being requested under the PD, a 20-foot high freestanding sign and a shared parking concept. The shared parking is supported by a parking study that was submitted by the applicant, done by a consultant that they hired, and the town did a second study through the town's consultant, TJKM. The parking study involved observation of several motels of similar size to this one and commercial centers that included high turnover sit-down restaurants, since there are 2 restaurants proposed within this area of the new building. The consultant visited the locations at different times of day. They went during morning hours, midday, and evening, or late afternoon, early evening hours, and observed vehicles coming in and out and how many were parking. And were able to come to the conclusion that the 77 spaces proposed on this site should be adequate to support the uses here, because the parking demand is different for the uses at different times of day. So, in other words, the motel is occupied primarily in the evening. And when the commercial uses would be closed, the offices would probably be closed at that time, and the parking demand should be adequate for the motel when the other uses aren't being operated. Likewise, the retail uses are operating during the day hours when most of the people are gone from the hotel, so it looks like the parking should balance out, and we should be okay with the number of spaces that's proposed here. Because there will be an increase of more than 19 traffic trips, during peak periods, the applicant is required to perform some sort of community benefit. They have included a community benefit offering. We felt that that probably could be strengthened, and made that point in the staff report for your consideration. And other issues were the sign height and the height of the building and the tower element predominantly. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to try to answer those for you.
Okay, Commissioners, does anyone have a question? Commissioner O'Donnell, followed by Commissioner Rice.
The restaurant, I take it, would be open at night.
It could be. The things that they're talking about probably would not be open very late. But at this point, they don't have specific tenants. They've just talked about types of restaurants, and so we tried to study similar types of restaurants.
Well, the ones you studied, were they open at night?
They're open into the early evening,
And what does that mean?
to the 6 or 7 p.m. range. I don't, you have
Because
to,
unless we impose a condition that says you'll close the restaurant at 7 p.m., I assume we have to assume that they'll be open later.
yeah, I don't know if, it may be that fewer people were there late in the evening. I don't know. We didn't go late into the evening with the study.
Did we, this was their study, is that correct?
They did one, and then we did a second one.
And our second one assumed that the restaurant would close at 6 or 7?
We didn't assume hours. We didn't have any specific hours of operation
Well,
involved.
how do you do a traffic study if you don't know what time traffic occurs?
It wasn't traffic, it was parking specifically.
I thought we were talking about, but you were talking about a traffic study.
Well, we have two studies that were done, a traffic study and a parking study. The traffic study is looking at trip generation rates, and that's a whole different thing from the parking.
Well, if the traffic is generated by the restaurant, we assume that it has to park, is that correct?
We can't differentiate how much the restaurant has a certain trip generation rate, but it's not the same thing as parking. It's just trips going in and out of the site, and perhaps the engineer can explain the difference between the traffic and the parking, but the number of trips coming in and out of the site isn't necessarily the number of vehicles we're going to see parked at a certain time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rice, followed by Commissioner Kane, and then Commissioner Sayak.
Question was, did the applicant choose intentionally to bypass the CDAC process?
No, initially what happened was they came in with an application, and we looked at it, and they were proposing a retail building, which is, permitted use in the zone, and staff looked at that and didn't feel it was something that needed to go to CDAC. We didn't see policy issues related to it, and it looked pretty straightforward. They came in, the applicant has subsequently, gone through different plan iterations, the project's evolved, ultimately a PD was filed, the building got larger, it went from 5,000 that we originally saw to 9,000. We did offer them an opportunity to go to CDAC, but they were very far down the road and decided at that point just to go to public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
And for the audience, CDAC stands for Conceptual Development Advisory Committee, and it's a committee formed of council and commission members who an applicant can come to that committee, and it's sort of a freebie in town, and we give opinion about a project and often trigger, things like traffic and identify other items that might be of conflict with their application. So anyway, with that, Commissioner Kane, it was you, and then Commissioner Sayak.
I wanted to follow up on what Commissioner O'Donnell was saying, and then I had other questions, but I'll yield to Commissioner Sayak after this one. The traffic study, the parking study, Ms. Davis, I'm always concerned about approving stuff we don't know what it is, and we don't know what the restaurant is, and we don't know what the retail is, and you mentioned 2 restaurants, and it seems the character of the land use, the property is changing significantly. I thought my friends had stayed there years ago and said one of the things they didn't like, and it may have changed since, one of the things they didn't like is they didn't have room service. And if they're going to spend a lot of money on upscaling and improving and enlarging their motor inn, they may want to add room service vis-a-vis the new restaurant that they intend. And if they're going to have room service, then they're going to be open late. That means the restaurant will be open late, and that means the shared parking begins to have less appeal. because there won't be shared parking. There'll be the two constituents there at the same time, the people staying there, restaurants open, people visiting the restaurants. I think it's important, unless, Mr. Parsons, you know these things, but if that restaurant is open late, the shared parking just doesn't work. Or does it?
First of all, if they have room service, they could have a separate service kitchen like the Los Gatos Hotel does. There's that possibility. It doesn't necessarily mean the restaurant would have to be open late, but a restaurant does require a use permit. And once they know a tenant, the tenant comes in, we evaluate that specific restaurant, we probably have a better idea of what kind of hour restrictions we might want to place on it.
I understand what you said, and I appreciate it. The problem with sequential approvals is we get ourselves into the bind that the dam is broke, the barn door's open, et cetera, and now here comes this little restaurant trying to survive, and then we're put upon to say, well, how can you be so bad to deny the restaurant? Wherever practical, I would, maybe it's not practical or possible, I would like to see a whole package so that we know what we're doing, so we're not hit sequentially by which kind of restaurant is going to come in and what kind of retail is going to come in. I know there's a CUP process, but it's awkward for us to look critically at a project that's 90% done and maybe even dependent upon these final pegs being hammered in. And then we're faced with it. We're put in a very difficult position.
Thank you. Do you have a question, Commissioner Sayoc? Thank you. This is the time for questions.
I actually have 4 questions of staff, and the first I'll take with regard to parking, since that's the subject that we're speaking about. Do we have an example in town, a successful example of a shared parking, so that we have something to have learned from?
I don't know exactly the same as this.
Yes, well, staff is pointing out that there are other shared parking arrangements in town, but they're not similar to the one in this application. One example that I can think of just offhand is the Kapatabachi arrangement with a neighboring office building, which has a fairly substantial parking lot behind the building, and through an agreement and also conditions that were applied to applications by both property owners has resulted in a shared parking arrangement that has operated fairly successful for well over 10 years, or approximately 10 years.
When we were reviewing that shared parking, were the hours of operation specified up front so that each party had their hours and we knew up front who had what?
I have to shake the cobwebs of my mind to remember that hearing, but I do believe that the hours of operation of both businesses was very important, and in particular because the office building does generally close down for business at a fairly early hour, whereas Kapatabachi's major need occurred later in the evening. And the parking, I should say that the conditions of approval of that shared parking arrangement reflects those particular hours.
So then, in a situation, if we, as a group, decided that we wanted to accept this parking study, then we could, in this process, through this zone change, specify the hours of operation of a future restaurant. Is that correct?
Well, if you were to just, I don't want to speculate on what you could do, but if you established hours of hours for the parking lot that then had to translate to the various businesses, then it would make sense that in reviewing any subsequent use permit applications for businesses such as a restaurant, you may feel compelled under the circumstances, and may be necessary under the circumstances given the parking impacts of that particular business, to limit their hours accordingly.
Okay, thank you. So then my next question is, does the CUP come back to the Planning Commission, or is that approved at a staff level?
It does come back.
Okay. And then if you could just explain to me again, why it's necessary to do a plan development zone change? Because it seems that the retail uses proposed are consistent with its current change. Is the zone change to a PD necessary because of the 3 variances that they're requesting?
Yeah, they are asking for 3 or 2 exceptions. The sign isn't technically an exception, it's just not consistent with what we typically approve in the town. A 20-foot sign could be allowed by our sign ordinance, but it would be quite different than anything else we've approved at a lot of other commercial locations along the boulevard and other areas like that. And you'll see in the downtown, we don't even have monument signs or freestanding signs.
And then
Go
my
ahead,
final
Commissioner.
question.
Yes, Commissioner Saya,
My
go ahead.
last one. I'm particularly sensitive nowadays to stormwater requirements, and in the neg deck that's before us, because this has impervious surfaces of over 10,000 square feet, it says that there are certain requirements we do need to follow, and it just specifies that mechanical treatment device is what the applicant will be using for its stormwater. Can you just clarify what exactly that is?
Correct. It'll end up being a big underground tank with multiple sections to it that filter out oil and sediment.
And will that require a permit, or is that something that it will be incorporated into their design?
It'll be incorporated into their design, but they'll also be required to enter a contract with the town proving that it's maintained over time.
I have a follow-up about the sign. Mr. Suda, I just have a follow-up about the sign. In the report, it says that it's grandfathered in. Now, is that true under this new PD?
No, the existing sign was permitted. It's
Okay.
something the town permitted.
Okay, so that would stand under this PD?
It could, or you could require
Or
it
we
to go
could,
away.
okay, so we could do, okay,
Have the
thank you.
option, yes.
We have the option of altering that. Thank you. Mr. Suda, you wanted to say something?
Just reflecting on the conversation we're having about the hours of operation for the center, one option for the commission's consideration is since this is a plan development and the plan development is its own self-contained zoning code, you could require that the applicant come back with a master conditional use permit for the entire center that would lock in those specific hours of operation for all tenant spaces once they have a better idea of exactly who the tenants are going to be. That way, the commission has some assurance that you're going to see the hours of operation for every one of those tenants. Will be able to run a parking analysis specifically for those hours of operation, and then that will be locked in through the conditions of approval.
Okay, we have a question about that from Commissioner Kane, I think.
Through the chair, Mr. Suda, if we did the master CUP, and that makes sense, would that eliminate or prohibit our ability to then see individual CUPs on the respective tenants?
Not necessarily. You could lock in hours of operation through the master CUP, and if a subsequent business comes in that requires a CUP and is a use that wasn't contemplated under that master, then that would have to come back to you.
All right. Madam Chair, could I
Yeah.
comment on the general line of thought we're doing right here? But with respect to what comes back and what doesn't come back, or do you want to?
I would rather you hold that so we can move meeting along and then have the applicant perhaps get up. Did you have another question?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right. With that in mind, there were, I believe, 2 desk items on that. Commissioners, did you have a chance to review those? All right, thank you. Okay, so with that, I will call up the applicant. And did you fill out thank you. You did, thank you. I would like to use your name.
Dick Scott.
Instead of hey you. Mr. Dick Scott, thank you. And you'll be the presenter?
Yes, I will.
All right, would you please state your name, and would you also adjust the mic so we can hear you? Thank you very much. State your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Yes, it's Dick Scott, 103 Edelin Avenue, Los Gatos. Can I proceed, Madam?
Yes, please.
I'm just going to wait for the technology to catch up with me real quick. Excuse
Okay,
me.
why don't we restart the time then? You'll have 5 minutes to present.
5 minutes, thank you, ma'am. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners, staff. I want to thank you for your time this evening. I think the submittal from staff was very thorough. I just wanted to make three very small clarifications. The remark in the report regarding CDAC, CDAC was actually recommended to us 1 month ago, and that was after approximately 17 months under study. So as you can imagine, after waiting 17 months to get in front of an august body like yourselves versus just seeing maybe one, two, or three of you, gentlemen and ladies, we preferred to see all of you just because of the time and the number of iterations that we've been through. In that regard, it's probably worthy to note that it was noted that at one time we had a 5,000 square foot building on the understudy, and that's true. That was in the very initial stage of this, again, in the 14 to 18 month range ago. Since May of 2006, we've been talking about a 9,000 square foot building, which contemplates shared parking. And we submitted our planned development application in early July of 2006 with a 9,000 square foot building, using, of course, the shared parking that you gentlemen and ladies are discussing. And finally, I think it's important to note that we've been collaborating very closely with staff, and I've appreciated the input, also appreciated the input of Mr. Cannon. Mr. Cannon has had two careful reviews. To my knowledge, we have listened to all of his recommendations and staff's, and we've made all the accommodations, and including staff's initial context where they said a project that you might want to consider using as a good reference would be the Whole Foods, which of course does have a tower and which is a successful project. But on the 22nd of May, Mr. Cannon, as manifested in your report, indicates that he is satisfied with the project and recommends no further changes for the project. And we have accommodated his massing concerns in that element as well. Next slide, please. And I know that you've went through the very thorough submittal, but I'll just hit our argument very quickly. It'll only take a few minutes, madam. Our challenge is that we have a buried site. It's hidden below grade. Highway 9 is approximately 7 feet higher where our corner of the building where the tower starts. And as you might imagine, from a lodging perspective, it's important to be seen and it's important to be known. Candidly, people forget that there is a business here. It's simply not that visible. I'm going to point to what I believe best shows the gradient delta between Los Gatos Saratoga Road and the site. Again, here's the site. Here is the existing pole sign. The existing pole is here. Next slide, please. Starting in approximately December of 2005, we started to meet with various officials and representatives of the town, including Mr. Suda, Ms. Davis, Mr. Parsons, Ms. Surden, among others. And the message that we got was consistent. We were trying to feel out what really was the best way to proceed. We had a few ideas. The consistent message was that the town would prefer us to try to keep the motel. And of course, that's what we're trying to do, work within, the parameters that the town has set. We know you don't get too far fighting City Hall, and so although that probably wasn't the first thought that we had when we tied up and ultimately acquired this site, it did seem to be the smartest approach given the town's preferences. Next slide, please. In order to retain the motel,
Was that 5 minutes? All right. Do you want to wrap up your thought here?
Sure.
And then if the
Sure.
commission would like to see the rest of your presentation, I can ask them.
I probably need another 2.5, 3 minutes, if that's okay.
Well, would you, commissioners, would you like to see the rest of the presentation or just go right for questions?
My suggestion would be that we ask questions. That would get us to the points perhaps more easily and also be what we normally do in restricting people to the minutes we said they would have.
Okay. And so would you please wrap up that last thought you had?
Sure. So the idea was, in order to retain the motel, we have to activate the buried site. Our idea was to have some retail that's prominent and significant and interesting on the corner. Next slide, please.
Oh, well, no, just,
Okay.
that was it. Thank you very much. That was your last thought. Okay. Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have questions of this applicant? And I'll start with Commissioner O'Donnell and then Commissioner Rice. Was that a hand up?
I have been in town a long time, and I've had guests stay in that motel and never had any trouble finding it. One of the most immediate problems that I see is the tower. We've received a letter tonight which comments on the tower. When people have a view of the foothills, the tower kind of just gets in the way, and we've run into a couple of towers recently which we have not approved. It is true that the Whole Foods Center has a tower, but that's before my watch. So I guess we are, at least I am sensitive about the need for the tower. I don't have a problem with your desire to essentially have a more intensive use. But I am concerned that at the moment we have no real concept of traffic and shared parking except on a hypothetical which is not pinned down at all. So there's been a suggestion, and I think a good suggestion, and so I throw this out to you as a question. If we were to adopt what has been suggested, a master PD which sets some parameters, I don't know if you heard Mr. Suda when he said that. Do you have any comments about that kind of PD approval?
Commissioner, I think the first thing that should be done is that the parking study needs to be closely dissected, because these are professionals that study parking. We didn't tell anyone, the town didn't tell anyone to restrict hours in any way. They picked the times that they thought that the three uses, that the data suggested that the three uses would be most intensive, and those are the parking spaces that were then, of course, required for the site, because under the most intensive time of the day is when you'd need the most spaces. So I think that's step one.
Let me ask a question there. I've read a lot of traffic studies. It isn't clear to me what they assumed by way of the hours of operation of the restaurant. So you have a lot of confidence that they must have done something. Could you share with me what their assumption was on the hours of operation for the restaurant?
Well, Commissioner, in this parking study, it's a pretty complicated business, to be candid with you. So I'm not going to claim to speak for the town's parking consultant. But I do know when I asked some pointed questions as to whether the assumptions were conservative or liberal, and whether the approach considered had any artificial constraints, and it didn't, Commissioner. But I do think that we just need to look at that more closely now that we know that you want to zero in on it, and I think your concern is legitimate. But before I have to comment to a CUP, a master CUP, I think we need to understand the data better.
Okay. Just one last question on that point. Notwithstanding the complexity of all these things you hire experts for, do you have any clue as to what assumption they made as to the hours of operation of a major traffic producer in the evening when you're going to share space?
Well, Commissioner, I will tell you that the restaurants, which I believe that was the use that you were typifying to be most concerned. I'll tell you the ones that your consultant used. And by the way, just so you know, my manager's staff, because we knew that parking was so important to both you and us, and I don't want to make light of this. This is extremely important. I would say that I know that you guys are imminently concerned, but as a developer who doesn't want to have a parking issue, wants to have a successful project, doesn't want the neighborhood against us, our tenant selection is going to be absolutely critical. We do not want a parking problem. We have 2 different parking studies. But to your point, the TJKM study that the town uses and feels comfortable with used the following restaurants. They used the Boston Market, and I have stopped by the Boston Market at around 8:30 or 9 o'clock, Commissioner, and it's virtually empty. This is the one in Campbell. They used La Boulanger, I believe, at the Prune Yard. I'm not sure if it's open after 6 or 7, but I know there's very little traffic. It's a lunchtime situation. The diner, I believe this reference here is to the Los Gatos Diner. I would imagine that their hours are a little bit more liberal. I would imagine, I don't have them pinned, it's not defined in their study, but I would guess it's 11 p.m. Maybe someone here knows. The Mini Gourmet, which is a restaurant, I believe it's San Jose, but perhaps it's Campbell. It's in San Jose. I think that also has a broad range of hours as well. Hopefully that answers a little bit. I'm not saying that we've mastered it, but we do have a clue, and we are studying the motel guests and their patterns because that's the only thing we have at the moment. And then I have to rely on the consultants for these other uses that are conceptual in nature. You're welcome.
Commissioner, Commissioner Rice, was it your hand up for next? You were testing me to see if I remembered that? Is that why you
you were
didn't raise
looking at
your
me. I was
hand again?
comfortable that you were
All
going to
right.
get to me.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Thank you. I want to make sure I understand one of the points that you were making, and that is that your concern of the viability of the motel is that it's buried and really not visible. Is that correct?
It's below grade, and the motel itself is in the back of the site. So we've got
Understood.
2 things against it. Yes, Commissioner. That's one of the big concerns.
As I look at the site with the story poles up, it certainly appears to me that what you're proposing in the front of the lot, so to speak, will actually hide the motel more. And I'm trying to understand where you're making the connection that the proposed new building will actually improve matters for the motel.
Sure. Well, it's a legitimate question because it does screen it from the intersection without proper signage to some degree. Number one, I have met many vendors at our site, Commissioner, and many of them are from Los Gatos or the West Valley. And when I tell them the name of the motel, okay, they always assume it's the Los Gatos Lodge. Okay, that's just, I'm sure that you people have also had guests stay at both motels, but for whatever reason, 8 times out of 10, I got to clarify that there's another motel at the intersection. They often do not know. And so our thought was we're going to increase the quality of our motel offering so that they have a wonderful stay, so that's going to help. But I've got to get patrons to the site to experience that. And so the concept was, let's bring commerce there. Let's bring visibility using some identity to the site, to the corner. Let's bring people and the community to the site. If they're stopping by a coffee shop or a miniature copy center or a cleaners, if they're doing some of their household daily things, if they're picking up a sampling of food from a high-quality, fast-turn restaurant, the kind of food that is healthful and good, that's served at some of the better quality restaurants, they're going to know that there's a motel there because the parking is virtually right in between the motel and the retail building. So we're going to get commerce. They're going to see the offering up close. They're going to see that the quality has significantly increased. The style is much better. And then we're going to get a shot at keeping them as customers once they sample our product.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do have a question on something you said. Before we go to you, I have a follow-up on that. You said that you were increasing the offering of the motel site itself.
Quality.
The quality of the motel site itself. I didn't read in the report that you were planning on doing any quality improvements to the motel rooms themselves. Is that correct?
It is mentioned in the report.
That you will be...
Yes, we are. I don't know in regards to the venue and the approval that you're discussing, but it is mentioned in the report, and some of the things that I believe Ms. Davis mentioned is some of the, well, all of the interiors eventually, are going to be upgraded. That's not the part, as far as I understand it, that I needed to bring to the plan development right now.
That's true, but there's a reason for the question.
Okay, so, and I think she mentioned that that's our intent, and we're doing it. We're going to be doing it probably simultaneous, depending on how it goes, what we can get approval from a construction perspective. As Mr. Parsons knows, we're increasing the electrical power. That's part of the plan development.
With the Wi-Fi?
Because we are increasing the amount of draw that's needed in the rooms that now have a mini refrigerator that's quality, all of these things.
Thank you. Commissioner Sayok was next, and then Commissioner Kane.
Yes, ma'am.
With regard to the restaurants and your site plan here, it looks like you're going to have two small restaurants, one 1,500 square feet and the other 2,000. Is that set so that you will have two instead of one larger one?
You know, our preference and our experience as a developer, and Michael, my partner, has been doing this real estate for 20 years, and Les Pelio, the founder, Pelio and Associates, has been doing it 35, is that it's smart to diversify and have some small uses so that there's choices. We also feel that if we bring choices to our motel guests and to the amenity-starved neighborhood, that they're going to appreciate that, and there's a higher chance of success.
I believe I also read somewhere in the report that you're targeting quick service restaurants.
Fast
High
turn.
turnover.
Sit down.
Have you, in your mind, identified the types? Are we talking, you mentioned a coffee shop, a deli?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question, and, you know, it's one of those cart before the horse things. We've been very reticent about starting serious dialogue with our prospects until we know what we have and a timeline. To tell you what we talk about internally in our shop and the mood that we want to create, something that that my partners and I have discussed. One would be a Wolfgang Puck Express model, maybe a Payways model, high-quality stuff that you can sit down and eat quickly, okay, or pick up on the way home for a busy family. But, Commissioner, they're just two examples, and I still am shy to tell them that there are choices because we haven't started a significant dialogue with them because we really don't know what we have yet. Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner O'Kane.
Along that line, do you have any unofficial thoughts about the coffee shop?
Well, I know that Starbucks is a little out of vogue currently.
It's a little what?
Out of vogue. I think we maybe have enough Starbucks in town. I don't know if that's true or not, but I haven't been encouraged by various people that we talk to in the town to look for another Starbucks, given their location directly across the highway. And so we've thought of, we're open-minded, but we've thought of we should probably talk to Pete's because they're far enough away maybe to consider this what I believe is a very, very, very stellar location. I know that they're on Los Gatos Boulevard, but we are right there at the highway, and there'd be some.
Well, we also have 2 or 3 of the best independent coffee shops in the entire planet, and you might want to talk to them about an annex.
Absolutely. I mean, there's also, Yes, agreed.
Okay. Now my
Do you have
question.
another question?
Yeah, now my real question. With respect to the best on the planet, we've got 5 or 6 or maybe 20 of the best restaurants in the galaxy. I've researched this, and they don't have big signs. The best restaurant in the world is on a street that nobody knows the name of. It's that street around the back where you have to go this way to get there, and it's the most incredible restaurant in the world. And I don't think they have a sign out front. So what I'm saying, as Kevin Costner has taught us...
With a question.
Yes. If you build it, they will come. If you improve that facility, which has not had the best reputation in the world, people who come to this town will come with a destination. They're not going to drive up and down the street to see where to stay. I don't think your sign would make any difference in terms of the kind of consumer who would need a place to stay. I remember back when... Do you know that I remember back when occupancy in this town was 101%, and everybody was staying everywhere? Do you know, can you say, what your occupancy rates have been, and how would that compare, for example, with the Los Gatos Lodge?
Thank you, Commissioner
Or is that
Kane.
proprietary?
I think the town has that data in terms of the Los Gatos Lodge. I'm not privileged to that. I do know roughly what our occupancy has been and what it roughly used to be. If you're asking me to share that, I can do that.
Ballpark it.
Ballpark?
Give me a round number.
I think when we acquired the motel, it was probably in the 10% range, kind of maximum. The entire marketplace has done better over the last year or two in the lodging industry. Over the summer, we've gotten as high as 70 and 80% on occasion. What does that come out to on an average? Probably around 50% over the summer, and that doesn't cover our costs, of course. And now we're moving into a slow season.
All I want to offer respectively is you improve the quality and you'll improve your occupancy, and you don't need signs to do that.
Well, we've already brought it, from 10% to 50% with a significant amount of work from my manager, Mr. McClements, and his wife, Lilia, who live on site.
Word will get around that it's a good place to stay. You want the hotel to be seen. We don't. And so we need to discuss how to compromise and reach that. You've got the hotel backed up right to the street, and you want it to be seen. It doesn't have to, you know your business better than I do, but I know the town. If it's a good place to stay, people will.
Well, one of the things about this, our offering, is that we have a lot of really, really high-end lodging in this town, Commissioner, and we think our opportunity and niche is to essentially improve this, but not over-improve it. I think there's people in this community that still need an affordable but good quality offering, and so those types of people may not have the means to go to the restaurants that you'd mentioned, but we want quality offerings for both the neighborhood, the town, and our guests, and we think that our product is going to continue to be probably the most affordable in the town, but the term that we use amongst ourselves is we kind of want to pottery barn some of the interiors in terms of making it nice and clean, but not a Four Seasons. Service won't be probably Toll House, but and so I've got to factor that in, and I do think that neighborhood and these guests are handicapped a little bit. We can't compete very well against the motels downtown that are walking distance to many, many different services. So if we can bring these services to them, okay, and at the same time we can activate the identity by bringing people to the site and seeing the motel, I think we're going to get the best of both, and I think that of course, we're going to significantly further increase the quality of our motel offering, but I think, and my partners and many of the people we talk to think that a retail building here will bring commerce.
Thank you.
I do have a question before you sit down, and that is, this is going to change. We're going to go on another subject. Did you meet with the neighbors?
We met with several of the neighbors.
Did you have a community meeting, or you just met with them because you called on them, or they called you?
In one circumstance, we called on the condominium complex that sits up above us, and in two other meetings, we just called people that we knew would be a decent sampling. We hit a couple people at the village offices, I believe it's called. So we stopped by and looked for just input as to what they needed. In fact,
You stopped by the offices across the way or the residents?
We stopped by the offices during business hours at the village offices.
Okay.
Yeah. In one case, Commissioner, that's how we found out that that some of these business people have no place to buy a soda. So Mr. McClemens has been mentioning to me that we for some reason have a fairly high count at our little soda machine. Well, these people don't want to jump into a car, Commissioner, and use the gas to go wherever if they could walk. Everyone would prefer to walk. So we think we're really going to reduce some carbon footprint by bringing some of these services and preventing some trips, to be quite candid.
And let's see, you said retail, and I wanted to know, did you have anything identified, or have we been there?
I think we talked about that. Nothing, I gave you some of our conceptual ideas, but we're hesitant to actually engage because we don't know our timeline.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Sayak.
There's been some discussion about community benefit and staff recommendation of possibly beefing that up. Can you talk about any other community benefits you and your team have considered?
I'd be happy to. As staff indicated in our proposal, we think that we retain and grow a projected revenue stream, diversify local tourism, provide sustainable retail connection, create a new commercial retail site, and we embrace some good architecture that we think is going to add some interest to the town. Additionally, I've noticed in the conditions that it was suggested that that we also improve some of the mechanics in the signaling at the intersection, and also add, I believe, some signal interconnects. I haven't gone granular on that, but that's one thing that I think is contemplated. Additional thoughts that we wanted to talk to you about today would be the following. We have a public space indicated in our plan right at the elbow of the retail building, and we thought we'd get your feedback as to what maybe could work best. There's a circle if you go into the parking lot behind the retail, there's a circle here. Let me get my pointer. I probably can laser from there. There's a circle right in there. And Michael, can you bring up the site plan over here, please? Right in here that Mr. Kovza designed for us. And his suggestion was to leave it open so that we could have a meaningful dialogue with the town. A couple ideas that we chewed on was perhaps we put a pergola, a trellis of sorts, and perhaps it could be a public gathering space, is what Ms. Surden suggested when I spoke to her about it. And in that public gathering space, perhaps the Girl Scouts could sell cookies. Perhaps it could be a collection point for donations. Perhaps we could have a banner on the corner so that people could do sign up for Little League at a certain point. This location is almost equally proximate to East Side and West Side residents. So I think it would be, I think those are a few ideas that we came up with. Also, we wanted to point out that we'd be available to discuss using our old-fashioned wood fence as a place to hang banners to advertise the sign-up for a community or a charitable event. And finally, we'd be open to a discussion about having one of our suites double as a conference room and make that available to charitable town uses when that's not conflicted otherwise. So there's a few more ideas, Commissioner, that we're chewing on, and I know that we'll work with staff and work something out. You're welcome.
When you say you have a suite that could be available, what's the size of that? What's the capacity?
You know, it's for this motel model, it's a very large room. I would imagine that we could probably have 8 or 10 people there.
So you really do mean a meeting room?
Yes, excuse me, a meeting room. You're welcome.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions at this time? I do have a speaker card. Okay, we'll call you back up for a rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam.
And the speaker is Elena Kogan. Okay, thank you very much. And if anybody else wants to speak on this item, please remember to fill out a card. Thank you.
My name is Elena Kogan, and I live in 420 Pueblo de los Gatos, the complex adjacent to the Motor Inn, exactly in back of the Motor Inn. I have a few points to make, and I will start with the fact that I checked the package yesterday, and I found some letters from the businesses across the street with asking for a restaurant or some eating place nearby. And I was wondering if they can think to accommodate people who live there 5 days a week for 8 hours. How about us who live there 24 hours a day for 7 days a week? We would have liked some courtesy from them to come and knock on our doors and at least to explain to us what they want to do. We found out when they put the stakes up with the footprint of the building and the height. We never knew anything before. The traffic issue. In one of the traffic reports was saying that they have estimated 572 net new average daily trips because of this new planning. And it is in one of the reports. This means that for 70 parking spaces, they have to stay like 8 minutes each person. So it's going to be a lot of traffic in this area. And I don't know if you are familiar with this Alberta Way. On the side, it's a Motor Inn. Across the street, it's an office building. Then there are townhouses, condominiums, a senior complex. And in the back, by the cul-de-sac behind, it's another office building. And it's a lot of traffic in weekday. Fortunately, in weekends, we feel residential because it's not so much traffic. With these stores and restaurants, you know, it's going to cover these days too. So we don't think the 77 spaces, allotted spaces, will be the right number because if they have a conference room, and that's what it says on the plan actually, it doesn't say, you know, it says conference room. Let's say that you have 10 people and you have 30 people in a restaurant, including 2 restaurants, including staff and the guests, and you have 2 people per store. There are 7 stores. One a sales clerk and another is a customer. You already covered the 77, and the spill is going to come in front of our complex. And it happened before, and it's going to happen again. And they are going to block our entrance to the driveway and so forth. Another point I would like to make, they need to add a transformer on a transformer pad, walled in, and they are considering this one where the Port Kosher is now, I think. I'm not totally sure, but I think that's the location. That's something very noisy. We already have between the Motor Inn and our complex, we have a big electrical pole with a big transformer in top.
Okay, would you please wrap up your final thought?
So what I'm saying is I've seen more concern about the tree removals in the reports than about the needs of the neighborhood in terms of everything from sewer, electricity, water, noise, everything else. So we'd like a little more concern for us who live there year-round.
Thank you
Very much.
Do we have any questions, Commissioners? No. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you attend the one meeting that they had?
No, I didn't know about any.
Could you speak into the microphone? Yeah.
I didn't know about any meeting, and actually I was the one who sent yesterday to the board in our complex the findings about the meeting and the zoning change, and no one knew anything. So I don't know who they had the meeting with.
Okay. Your condominium complex is directly behind this?
Actually, my unit is in the corner. So basically, in my unit, I look through the back of the entrance to the lodge.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I have another speaker card, and that's Pat Lynch.
Hi, my name's Pat Lynch, and I represent the company CWA Realty, who owns the office complex between the property in question and the freeway. So we are directly to the west of the Motor Inn. We are a 30,000 square foot office complex, and I have 45 tenants of all different sizes. I have been in constant contact with Michael Roca and Les Pelio since this project was talked about, even probably before they mentioned it too many other places. We support the concept. However, we are seriously concerned about all the issues you brought up tonight. The parking and the traffic are already problems on that street. While we are an office complex, I have tenants who are in operation from 7 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week now. My parking lot is a continual battle for me. I come in the morning, it's the site of what looks like warfare at night from people who either get trapped on 17 going across and get stuck in traffic, who pull off and use my parking lot to sit and party in, contaminated in other ways I'm not going to say, just a myriad of things. We are really anxious for this project. We loved the fact that we could walk across the street and have somewhere to eat and not have to get in our car and drive downtown, whether it's coffee shop or whatever. But we are also concerned that it would be open late at night, and that's going to overflow into our parking lot, and I'm going to have even more detritus and issues to deal with. And it's not just the mess, it's the issue of liability of somebody falling. We have a 3-floor complex. We have railings that, kids on the weekends when I'm there, I catch kids skateboarding, running their motorcycles on our walkways, all kinds of stuff goes on. And that's just already with the people that live on the street or know about the street. So when you start bringing in people for other things, it's only going to intensify that. Part of our problem, too, is the street has never been marked as a dead-end street. We get big trucks that come down that street and cannot get out, and they use my parking lot as their way to turn around and get back on the freeway. I have speech therapists with very small children as clients. I'm waiting for the day one of those kids gets nailed by one of these trucks that zooms through my parking lot, who has no business being there at all. So we have an issue. We need some signage on that street to indicate that it is not a through street, and in addition, if there's any way to limit the size of trucks that are allowed down that street, that's something that needs to be addressed as part of this procedure. So, in fairness to these guys, they have talked to some of the tenants, some of the people on the street, but there are issues with this restaurant and the hours that are of concern to us.
Okay, thank you. Do we have questions, Commissioner? Commissioner King.
From a resident's point of view, a restaurant is likely going to go in. Would you feel better about it, or would you be more concerned about it if the restaurant also served alcohol?
Oh, real concerned about the alcohol issue. As you guys may not know, the property that we have had a restaurant in it for years. It was L'Hermitage and Jeff's restaurant. And I've been the manager of this property for 20-some years now, and I also was at the Los Gatos Lodge for years before that. The alcohol creates a situation with the lateness at night, people partying, and we have not only this lady's condo complex, but we have a seniors complex on our side of the street. The noise, the stuff that goes on, that goes in hand with that, can present a problem. If it was early in the evening, one thing, but late at night, that's an issue for us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, did somebody have a hand up? No. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, Forrest Strait.
repeat my name and address?
Would you please repeat your name and address?
Forest Strait, 146 Maggie. I just have a few concerns. I don't know that our town needs more retail. I don't know that we need another restaurant. I live in the area. I could walk to restaurants. I could do anything from that area, and I don't know that we need more retail there. As far as the extra square footage, I thought originally that it was going to be more offices, like across the street. Do we need another coffee shop? I don't think so. Do we need a restaurant? I don't think so. And one of the things that in the traffic flow study, having lived there and seen accidents on that intersection where the stoplight is, I see one at least once a month. And it's a major accident from people making U-turns, and I can just see people coming to a retail looking for a cleaners or looking for whatever, slowing down, stopping, and having more accidents at this intersection. I think it's a very dangerous place. I've seen motorcycles in accidents there, and 10, 15 accidents a year at least. I mean, you can talk to the police department and verify that. I think that's all I had to say.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Strait?
A question for staff.
Commissioner Kane, Mr. Strait or staff?
Well,
Would you like him to remain at the
if
podium?
anybody can answer what he just said, do we have 10, 15 accidents a year at that intersection?
I haven't heard about it. I mean, he lives there. I wouldn't doubt it. But the intersection by the traffic study is operating at level service B, and so it's not a heavily impacted intersection. So if people
10 or 15 people a year are being heavily impacted.
Well, yeah, and the question really is, it's not necessarily because there's a lot of traffic in the intersection. It's because people are doing things that maybe they should not be doing. But how do we answer that?
Thank you.
My comment might be to that, perhaps the intersection is difficult at certain times.
I drive the intersection a lot myself, and
be careful.
Yeah, be careful. That's
okay. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, sir. And I have two more speaker cards. Tina Mala. Did I say that right? Thank you.
Tina Mala, actually. Incidentally, I just wanted to say, when I live at 420 Alberto Way, and when I turn left on Alberto Way, many times I see the cars coming down Highway 9 or Los Gatos Saratoga Road, and just there's a red light, but they don't see it for some reason, and they just go through it. So, I've had a couple of near misses myself, and I'm not saying that that's related to this issue, but I just wanted to mention that. I'm really thrilled that the motel next door is being updated. It's been a while, thank God, There's about, I don't know how many property owners that live on Alberto Way, but for many of us, when we have friends and family come visit us, the only introduction they get to Los Gatos is Los Gatos Motor Inn, because they take 880, they take the East Los Gatos exit, and there they are at the light, and there's Los Gatos Motor Inn. And I love Los Gatos, and I just don't think, Los Gatos Motor Inn may have been, in its heyday, a hallmark in the area, but it just doesn't really reflect, I think, the beauty and standards that we have today. So it would be great to see some improvement there, and I trust that the town will do what it can to, exact as much aesthetic improvement as possible. I don't think that the motel is not visible. I think it's too visible. I think the sign is like the largest tachia sign in town. It's from the 70s, so I'm not sure if visibility is an issue. I think upgrading it will probably bring a lot of, would address the vacancy issue. I think that might be more enticing to people. I'm really concerned about the traffic and noise. Alberto Way barely can accommodate those of us who live there as it is. Alberto Way, that's all we have. It's not like other areas in town where our guests or family or service people can park on other streets. It's a cul-de-sac, and that's it. We can't have people spill out and park on the highway or, park on Los Gatos Saratoga Road or, park on University. I mean, that is it. It's finite, and so it's really, really critical and important that we make sure that there's adequate parking for what the applicant proposes to do. And I guess those are my points. Thanks very much for hearing me.
Okay, do you want to wait a minute? Do we have any questions for this speaker? Seeing none, thank you very much. Okay, Citizen Ray.
Speaking in the public interest, and I cannot believe the words I heard from our so-called engineer. My God, that road coming down there must be a 40% slope down to a stop sign. Unbelievable. He says it's no problem. And it's Highway 9. The state highway has all the truck traffic, all the traffic that comes from a state highway. And he says it's not impacted. Nonsense. Nonsense, Fletcher. Back to Stanford, where you came from. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, this CH zone is a highway-related zone, okay? But the uses are emphasized serving the community. And the potential here would be for a regional operation, all right? Now, that flies in the face of our small town general plan vision, all right? And guess what? Directly across the street in the last 8 years, Los Gatos Lodge has come in at least 3 times with 300-room hotels, parking for same, 10,000 square foot convention center, a San Jose-style operation directly across the street. So don't give them any incentive to come back or forth. And the town council, excuse me, has said no to each one of those concepts. So don't give anybody in that area that's in business a thought that you're going to relax your small town and go to a regional San Jose-style operation here. Towers. We know what the Hollywood Video Tower did to towers in this town. Every architect that comes in has to have a tower. Phallic, stiff, and upright. That says, here's the architect of the century, okay? Nonsense. More nonsense. And you know what you've done in the past, and the town council has done to towers. So send the message to these people. They're newcomers, evidently. They don't know our community. They're strangers. Send the message, tell them what goes here, all right? Small town, serve the community. That's it. If you don't like it, go to San Jose.
Okay, thank you.
Am I clear?
Ray, you're clear. Okay, we have another speaker, and that's Mark Carlquist.
Thank you. I reside at 229 Glenridge Avenue. I also maintain my offices at 654 North Santa Cruz Avenue. These people are known in the community. They're not new to the community. I know Les Paleo. I know Dick Scott. I know Michael. They're good local people, all right, with integrity. They were kind enough to give me just the printout version of what we saw. They acquired property, a motel property that was running at 10% occupancy, right? A rundown property. What they're proposing can be characterized as significant betterment. Please support them. We do need more retail. The lesson learned after the 1989 earthquake is that we do need, the physical realities are we do need that point of sale revenue to support what our community is entitled to, and that's the level of services that it enjoys now. Thank you.
Do we have a question here? Commissioner Kane. Would you wait, please, Mr. Carlquist? Thank you.
Mr. Carlquist, was that an amicus brief? Are you a friend? Or
I am a friend, yes.
A principal?
No, I'm a friend of Les Paleo's. I'm a friend of Dick Scott. I'm a friend of Michael's.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners. I don't have any more speaker cards, so I'd like to call the applicant back up. And you can have 3 minutes for a rebuttal, and then please stay at the podium for further questions. Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to I want to thank all of the people that have taken the time to come and articulate their interest in the project, and I do have some cards, and I do want to speak to any of you that do want to speak to us regarding ideas and the like, so I'm going to leave some cards here. I don't want to waste anyone's time. Having said that, one thing I just wanted to point out is we had 2 parking studies and 1 traffic study done, and 2 of the 3, of course, were picked. The consultants were picked by the town. The 2 parking studies and the 1 traffic study have been completed. The parking studies give the project a sound endorsement and applaud the use of shared parking as efficient and responsible. As you know, as the commission knows, empty parking lots is kind of the bane of development. We're trying to not have a bunch of asphalt. If we had 2 uses separate, we'd probably have 1/3 more parking spots in the city empty, no doubt. Having said that, the reality of the situation is the new retail businesses will be able to take advantage of the parking during the day hours, while the Los Gatos Inn guests will park later in the evening. The traffic study indicates, and I quote, "The relatively small trip generation would allow affected intersections to operate acceptably under all future scenarios analyzed." There's no doubt that there's been accidents at this intersection like other intersections in town, but the town paid a professional to look at these situations, and they came back with some, and as you know, that the town is a neutral body and tries to use consultants that they think are objective. There is a likelihood that traffic to the downtown Los Gatos Village may be reduced because people will not have to drive as far and, in some cases, be able to walk to amenities located in the new retail building. In our case, as the owner of a motel, incidentally, that acts as a buffer between some of these residential consultants on our borders, those guests were not going to have to get into a car is one of our objectives. They can walk across. In fact, they don't even need to go buy their car. They can walk directly to the retail and get their services and go back to their room. In regards to, I think it was Tina's comment that she agrees on some improvements to the motel. We're happy that we can provide that to the town, and we do want to do everything that we can do to make it a very nice stay, but also an affordable stay. I think that's the primary thrust.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have questions? And I have some too, but go ahead, Commissioner Rice, you had your hand up.
What would you have us do with this right now? It seems to me, and I'm going to ask you to answer that question in a second, but it seems to me that at the moment we're kind of looking at an incomplete package.
To be candid, I think you guys got to answer that a little bit better than I do. I mean, you have more experience on point. What I do know is I've done everything that the town has asked of us, except submit a CDA or consider a CDAC in the 17th month of the study. When the shared parking concept came up, Commissioner, and there were some legitimate questions by yourself and Commissioner O'Donnell at a minimum, that's a very complex study, and I'm not going to claim to be the master of it, but I think that particular study, and if you want to look at our study, needs to be analyzed a little bit more, and we need to come back and answer some of your very pointed questions regarding late uses.
Okay, so if I may follow up?
Yes, go ahead.
So then, just to make sure I'm clear, you would not be averse to us sending this back, whether we're continuing it or remanding it to staff for further refinement. Is that correct?
I don't think you guys are satisfied on the restaurant parking data. Is that true?
We don't know that yet.
Well, I can answer that for
Yeah,
myself.
for
if you're
yourself
okay
you
with that.
can.
For myself, I think my perspective would be that, as a garbage in, garbage out kind of a thing, without the full data of what you want to put in there, a parking study isn't going to give us the answers that would make me feel comfortable with the shared parking. Because if you don't know how long a restaurant's going to be open, you don't know how many people are going to be there until what time.
Well, you guys picked your consultant. I imagine they do know exactly the time. I gave you the names of the consultant that your study used, and as I mentioned, I think some more study on that subject probably wouldn't be a bad thing.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Fine. Anybody else have a question? Commissioner Sayoc?
There was some discussion from the residents of the area about noise, and in our NEGDEC and initial study, there's also a lot of discussion about the potential noise to the residents who are sensitive receptors. One of the biggest things I identify in your plan is this transformer. Is that and obviously that's very noisy. Is that something that can be changed in location so that it's further away from the residents?
Commissioner, I can't tell you that that there's not another feasible option. I will tell you that I met with Ms. Davis and Mr. Parsons at the site, and that clearly is the most logical place to have that based on where the utilities go to the site and the like. Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner King?
Well, the town architect mentioned the size and effect of a larger transformer. Now, one of the neighbors mentioned the noise of it, which, if it was in here, I missed it, I'm sorry. So if you're going to make it bigger, better, can you make it more quiet? In any event, that's rhetorical. That would be a condition. If it's an old one making noise, don't put in a bigger one that's making noise. So you can find a bigger one that's more quiet.
Okay, I have a question. We'll go into some architecture. Wanted to ask you the lobby area. What exactly is going to, I looked at it and I saw a coffee area. It's very large. Do you know the dimensions of that?
I think it's around approximately 350 or 400 feet. Michael, if you can pull up the site plan, please. Let's see here. And then, Commissioners, if you could open up your packages, and I'm going to get mine as well. And consult to the...
I guess my question, you can take the mic with you. I guess my question is, why would you need such a large lobby for the coffee service?
It's actually a very, very modest lobby compared to the new standards for a size motel that we are undertaking. It's got a small coffee bar. A lot of the new motels like this, Commissioner, would have a full restaurant area with a number of places for people to sit down and the like. As Mr. Kobes, if you had further questions, I'm sure he could take them. But this is really the minimum that we can do in terms of a size. And we were trying to locate the lobby in a more central location, Commissioner. And so while doing that, we decided to improve it, give it a little bit more style, update it, just make it a nicer offering.
Okay. And then also I saw that you had a spa. Can you explain the spa to me?
Yeah, I think that's lodging language that describes maybe a hot tub or something of that nature.
So you don't mean an independently operated spa?
No. It would be
massage and...
No.
Just had to check. Wasn't explained. Okay, I don't think I have any further questions. Oh, I did have about community benefit. And you did say tonight something about whatever, but I wondered if you had done any research in our town for like developments and researched what community benefit they offered.
I was given a sample of some other some other developments and what they did. In fact, Mr. Roach and I talked about a couple of those. Candidly, we're trying to look for some linkage to the direct area so that the residents and the proximate area is bettered. So we tried to keep things under our control, that we know we could offer quality, and we know that the benefits would go towards the residents in our neighborhood or at the hotel, and we tried to go a little bit micro there. But I know there's lots of good things that other people have done. We just chose a little bit more creative approach for our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Commissioners? None. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will close the public hearing now, and I'll turn this over to the Commission for discussion, questions of staff, or a motion. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I want to say several things, one of which is, I think it's a good idea that somebody is trying to improve the motel. However, I drive by that motel at least twice a day. I drive that road, as I say, at least twice a day. I've never had any difficulty seeing the motel. I've never had any difficulty seeing the sign. I do not consider this application to arise out of a poor exposure of that motel, notwithstanding the applicant's perhaps good faith belief that that's the case. I think the applicant apparently has done a very good job of raising the, I didn't realize that there was a vacancy factor so high, so you've done a very nice job, but still it's not a break even. However, putting 9,000 square feet more into that and backing it up to this incline will shut off the motel from vision, which is what Commissioner Rice made the point, and I have no doubt that's the case. Plus, you won't be able to see what the store is that is backing up. So you've got this sign, and the applicant wants the sign to say, here we are, and to name it. Staff recommends no. We want to have one name. So the whole thing is sort of self-defeating. The staff also tells us that it fits everything as with the CH zoning except three things, and oh, by the way, in an effort to streamline the process for applicants following approval of a PD, the council has supported the process of subsequent architecture and site approval application reviewed by DRC rather than the Planning Commission. I find that to be amazing. But let me say this, the staff does say there are three issues, and those issues are rather significant. One, it says an issue is the reduced front and side setbacks requested for the new commercial buildings. Two, the 77 on-site parking spaces will be shared between the motel and other uses on the site, supported by a parking study. We've heard about that parking study, which is a very imaginative thing. And the proposed monument sign is taller than allowed by the sign ordinance. Those are rather critical issues. When I read this report, it sounds like the staff is in favor of this thing with some exceptions. Those I consider to be very serious exceptions. So I think Mr. Suda made a very good suggestion. I think these people do have a right, assuming that they meet the CH zoning requirements, which the staff tells me they do, to do something more than they've got there. But this particular proposal, it appears to me to be totally motivated by trying to get as much on the space as possible. It doesn't make a lot of sense, because I don't know how you help the motel business by hiding it. I don't know how you help the commercial business you're going to put there by having them back up to the road. It looks to me like you're going to build something which will hurt the motel, to say nothing of what it will do to the restaurant and the other things. So I've been here long enough to know what happened to the restaurant, which was across the street. I took a client there one night, and my wife and I were the only people with that client in the whole restaurant. So I guess my feeling would be it's too dense. I think the traffic study doesn't withstand any kind of scrutiny. If we were to approve this, I would say that we would impose a traffic limitation, and when that limitation is reached, that cuts off any further commercial development. And I know that can be done because our sister cities do it. I think some of us received a letter from Hyatt about what they propose to do across the street They're talking about a 6-story building for a retirement community. Certainly if one is doing an EIR or a negative declaration or something, knowing that something is, Hyatt tells us they bought that site, which I find not quite believable, but that's what their letter says. So if you simply accept their letter that they bought the site, they're going to do something with it. And as I say, Mr. Parsons' comment was not far-fetched. I drive that every day, twice a day, and I've never had a problem with it. But that doesn't mean if you put a 6-story retirement community and this, that I won't have a problem with it. So assuming for the moment that this CH zoning requirement tells us, well, they've got a right to do this, I think it is too dense. I think the setbacks are not adequate. I think the parking spots are not adequate. And I think the monument sign is too tall, and the proposal to put a bunch of tenants on it are too many. So that's the way I feel about it.
Okay, Commissioner,
I want to hear from everybody.
okay. Who had their hand up first, Commissioner Kane or Commissioner Rice? Commissioner Rice, and then Commissioner Sayoc.
I can't disagree with anything Commissioner O'Donnell just said, but I will add 2 other things to it. First of all, I think that hopefully when this comes back to us, I want to see something specifically dealing with the community benefit. And the other thing that's kind of the 800-pound gorilla sitting in the room that nobody's talked about yet is the fact of how out of character this whole plan is with the intersection that's there and the other development. You've got, for lack of a better word, greenery on all 4 corners right now. And this is going to give you 3 corners of greenery and one of a very large building. And I'm very uncomfortable with that. I want to reiterate also what Commissioner O'Donnell said of I want to compliment the owners for the efforts they've made, and I have no inherent bias against doing something there, but it's got to be harmonious with what's already there. I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Sayoc?
Well, unfortunately, Commissioner Rice has stolen a lot of my comments, but I'd like to also say that I really support the concept of renovating the site and augmenting it with some type of retail or additional space. I'm not quite sure 9,000 is the right amount, as seen with the issues that is regard to the traffic. The other comment was regard to the landscaping. Because all 4 intersections currently are heavily landscaped, I think it would be a detriment to have one corner to be just a big building. And I actually think that could actually hurt the existing motel when you remove a lot of that greenery and instead place basically an asphalt parking lot in front. And in my mind, anything that would hurt the motel and bring down the average daily rate for that would only just harm the town. Because as a resident had pointed out, to many people that could be their first impression of Los Gatos. So definitely when it comes back, I'd like to see the larger setbacks, at least the setbacks that are normally required in a development of that area. Just because it's a planned development, I wouldn't want to see the usual requirements be pushed aside. So that's one of the key issues. We talked about the landscaping. I like this visual depiction here, but if you could include one of what the actual landscaping would be, because as I mentioned right now, if you look at this, if you enter that area, you just see a big expanse of parking lot, whereas your landscape plan actually shows that there's going to be some trees in there, so that might be helpful for me. And definitely the community benefit, I think, needs to be strengthened, and if you could just specify what exactly you have proposed, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
And Commissioner Kane, do you want to say something? And then I will. Thank you.
Just 2 things I want to repeat. One is to applaud the effort to improve this facility that's desperately needed. And I'm I must say I agree 100% with Commissioner O'Donnell, and that doesn't happen often, but he really said it all, and he really said it quite well. So what you're listening to is a pretty unanimous front on changes we'd like to see made. One thing Commissioner O'Donnell said I want to underscore for staff is a disagreement with the interpretation of what comes back to Planning Commission and what goes to other deciding bodies, DRC or whomever. I'm totally in support with Commissioner O'Donnell on that point. And that's it.
Okay, that leaves me. I read the report, and quite frankly, I think you have a very unique area. I think you have overlooked what's so special about where that motel is. And the fact is that you have a piece of land that well-landscaped, updated the motel, and people will come there because it's, how do I say it, it's many motels I've stayed at or inns are tucked away little places in the hamlets, and those always seem to be so attractive. So actually, I think when you spend the money on updating the site, which I'm glad to see, put some into your motel, as you said you would. Let's see. Everything that's been said tonight, I would wholeheartedly agree with. I would say that, what qualifies, I'm looking at the architecture, and I can hardly think that this qualifies really as excellence in design. And I'd like to have you go back to review the commercial design guidelines and remember that our excellence in architecture is a lot about the quality of the building, which are the materials and the details. And also that you took out the green that really was setting that off. It just almost broke my heart. So I really, because it's overbuilt, I think maybe we could, let's get that back in there. I could go on about some things, but I would hope that you'd return this and work with the staff on some of these other comments I had. I think the restaurant would be a very good use for this motel. I'm not so sure about retail as far as drawing in the rest of the community, but if it was a small store that would service motel people and perhaps people in the area, I could see that would be of good use. But I don't think we should try to mismatch too much service motel with where you are. You don't have the room for it. I am very concerned about the shared parking in this regard, and with the hours of operation for any of it. So let's see what else that I want to say. I think that's it. I don't consider this a gateway to town, by the way. It's really what you were doing with this design is a gateway to Alberta, and I don't think that's what we really would like you to do. So this is not a gateway entrance to town. It is on it's on the main artery, but it's certainly not the gateway. I agree with the staff on the sign as well, and I think I'll end my comments there. So I'll look for a motion.
Could I ask a question of staff?
Yes, because I have one too.
Mr. Suda, you made a comment, I think, about, maybe I'm misphrasing it, about a master PD. Whether I'm... CUP, whether I'm correctly phrasing it or not. Would you repeat that again? Because I thought your comment was very helpful, but I'm not sure I recall it completely.
My suggestion was to consider a master conditional use permit that would specifically address the uses that would go into this new building and would address the types of uses and the hours of operation for each one of those spaces in the building. And that really would be correlated to the results of the parking study, so that you know that the assumptions made in the parking study will align with reality should this building ever get built. And that also gives the applicant time after the plan development is approved to go out to the market, solicit those tenants, and come back to you with a more defined concept of who's going to be in this building. I understand the applicant's point that at this point it's very difficult to get tenants because nobody's sure if and when the building will be built.
Is it correct, though, that your suggestion is not ripe? In other words, we have a PD before us. We do not have any form of CUP before us.
It would be a condition of the plan development. At this point, the applicant doesn't necessarily have all the details on who those tenants may be.
My question is, if we were to one way or the other adopt something on the PD, are you suggesting that included in that would be the requirement of coming back with a master CUP?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Now I understand. I'm prepared to make a motion.
I saw a hand over there.
I was going to do it. Go ahead.
I'll be glad to let you do it.
Commissioner Rice, who wants to do it? Commissioner,
I'm assuming we're going to, I'll move that we send this back to planning to come back to us at some point in the future with the comments that have been made as advice to staff and the applicant. Is that what you're looking for?
is that, I don't think that qualifies as a motion.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
It could qualify as a motion. However, if I may, if the maker of the motion would wish to continue the public hearing to a date certain, that would alleviate the requirement of renoticing. However, setting that date will be difficult given the effort that this project is going to require.
My concern.
But nevertheless, it is possible to set a date, and if they're not prepared, continue the hearing yet again. So that can be done.
I'm fine with that. We can continue to a date certain. What's available on the calendar?
I would suggest that you reopen the public hearing to ask the question of the applicant in terms of how long it will take them to respond.
Okay, wait a minute. We have a motion without a second. We could either not get a second, or, and then, but if we did, we could have discussion. Now, how do you want to do this? Commissioner O'Donnell, you have a burning question, I can tell.
Well, I would support the motion, however, and I'm sure Commissioner Rice would agree to this. I think some of us would like to flesh out the motion a bit, and I don't think you have any objection to that.
I have no objection.
So I guess all I'm saying is, for purposes of doing that, I think what I should do is second the motion, but offer some proposed amendments to it that the commission could then consider and the maker of the motion could consider, if that would be okay.
I think that would be good. And then we could open the public hearing, is that right?
Right.
Mr.
I think you're just leaving the date blank for the time being.
Yes.
The staff had recommended, and I think it was a good recommendation, in their report that if the commission determines that modifications are necessary, it should recommend approval of the application with additional and/or modified conditions, or continue the matter to a date certain with specific direction to the applicant for desired plan changes. The motion as made, certainly, if one reads the record, there are a number of them, but I would like to try to make as clear as possible those recommendations. So I would just like to add some, and I'm sure my fellow commissioners might want to sharpen that too. So I would suggest that in modifying their plans, they give particular attention to the front and side setbacks.
Can we be more specific with that?
Yes, increase them so that there is more greenery. Okay, so that's one suggestion. Secondly, I don't believe that we have before us sufficient support that the 77 on-site parking spaces would be adequate, and therefore I would request that the parking studies be sharpened so we know what the assumptions are. And third, I would like the applicant to consider the likelihood that a master CUP will ultimately be imposed, which I'm suggesting would cut off further development on a progressive basis. In other words, as CUPs are issued to individual users, they will have to tell us what their traffic is. And we're going to have an assumption on this as to what the maximum traffic impact is. If you reach that maximum traffic impact before you build out, you've just run out of traffic use. So the applicant then has to be very careful in moving forward that they don't run out of parking spaces before they run out of stores. So, and then I think the other thing, which all of my fellow commissioners have raised, is that the community benefit I believe has to be made much clearer than it is presently, and should be, when it's made clearer, we should understand how serious the community benefit would be. Those are the ones that I can think of, and I'll defer to my other commissioners.
Commissioner Kane, wait a minute. Would Commissioner Rice accept the seconders?
Yes, I would accept those. I'd like
Okay.
to add a couple that we
Okay,
talked
well,
about.
Commissioner Kane had his hand up first, and then...
Let him go.
No, Commissioner Kane.
Okay, fine. This incorporates the two recommendations by the town regarding reduced signage and
Yes.
and reduced tower, if not elimination of same.
Yes.
Okay.
Good point.
And that's fine with me as well. I would also, I don't think, Commissioner O'Donnell, unless I missed it, you dealt with the size or the intensity. I think we need to be specific that we feel that this is too intense as currently proposed. And I would also add, if it's okay with the seconder, that we put in something about that it needs to be more in harmony with the other three corners of that intersection.
I certainly accept that.
Translate as improved landscape.
Yes.
Whatever you say.
Yeah, okay. I have nothing to add to any of it. I would agree with it. Commissioner Sayak, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you've covered all my points, so.
Seems a very clean motion.
May I, through
It does.
the chair?
So now,
Through the chair, I have a question.
a question for Sayak.
Commissioner Sayak.
Commissioner Sayak.
Just deferring to your expertise, you're comfortable with the initial study and the mitigated neg deck as currently written?
Yes, yes. Mr. Parsons did satisfy my questions on the stormwater usage. You did, one thing that I will talk to you offline, though, is you mentioned that the town will be doing the monitoring. And so it's a very general question on how the town does that monitoring and its future. So, but we can take that offline.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, we have a motion, and what I would like to do is open the public hearing for the applicant to come up so we could maybe talk about a date certain. Mr. Scott.
Yes, Chair. In consultation with Mr. Kobza, we'd like to consider 30 days, and I know that might be tough, but I know, were you looking for my input?
Right.
Okay. 30 days.
Okay, let me ask, I mean, I'm just curious because you were in planning process so long for this.
Right.
That you think you can alter this entire site in 30 days.
And let me just, before the applicant answers, that would mean we'd need the information in roughly 2.5 weeks.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not the only person involved. We do have staff involved as well. Mr. Kobza, what's your thoughts? You're going to be working with us on this.
It's 30 days would be tight, because we have a lot of issues to deal with.
Yeah.
So we would
I
probably
would hope that you would come with the information we need. It sounds like we need a lot of information.
Well, I didn't have staff's input at the time, Chair, but I think 30 days for us to provide something to staff then. How does that sound, Mr. Suda?
That sounds more realistic, so that would make it November 14th.
Okay.
Okay. November 14th. Okay. So we will, thank you very much. I'll close the public hearing now.
Thank you.
So do we need a motion on that as well? Is that a separate motion, or can it be rolled in?
You can just amend the motion to add that date.
The date certain is November 14th for my motion that...
How long have I been doing this? Totally. Right over my head.
Okay with the seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you for your help, Commissioner.
Okay, so with that in mind, do we have any last comments that we'd like to make? I think we've just about covered everything. Okay, so Commissioners, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries.
One comment, Madam Chair, if I may. To the applicant, talk to the neighbors. Talk to the neighbors. You have talked to some. It would help if the ones who think they haven't been talked to are talked to, and the other offices at Village office as well. As clearly, there's going to be an impact on their parking across the street.
Thank you, Commissioner Kane.
And Madam Chair, if I
Yes.
just may remind the audience that the public hearing has been continued to November 14. There will be no additional notice of the continued public hearing, so watch for the 14th.
Thank you very much. We are almost at the end of our meeting, Commissioners. We have just, I think, a development report possibly from Mr. Suda. Is there one? Or is that before I ask the question about our special meeting? Or is that your report?
I'd like to go directly into that.
Okay. So, Commissioners, as you know, we have been hearing for the last, 2 sessions, I think, the application for Linda Avenue and Stephanie Lane. Because of the complexity of it and the number of people involved, I suggested to Mr. Suda that we perhaps have a special hearing on that. And so we have come up with some alternate dates, and it would be its own private hearing.
Question of the chair?
When I finish talking.
Okay.
No. The reason I did that was because of all of the issues that are involved in it. And to schedule a regular meeting with that meaty of a case might put in jeopardy other applications that would be on our regular meeting nights. So that is why I suggested it. And I also spoke with Mr. Suda. He thought that was a good idea. But I would like to bring it to my the commission and get your thoughts. And I have dates, so anyway.
And before you throw those dates out, let me ask point out one new request from the town manager and the town council, is they would like to schedule a special meeting, a joint meeting with the town council and the planning commission for a retreat. That would be on October 17th. So we would need your input as to your availability on that date also.
Right.
I'm not available on the 17th.
Nor am I.
Okay. I will give you the dates, though, for the other meeting for the Linda Avenue, Stephanie Lane, and those dates would be 10/11, 10/16, 10/17, 10/23, or 10/25. And Mr. Suda, do you think that's when we should have they should have the Linda Avenue application should be fully explored at that point? We'll have everything in front of us?
That is our expectation. We will know more specifically by the next meeting. As you'll recall, you continued Linda Avenue to a date certain, which is the next meeting, so that gives us 2 more weeks to pinpoint exactly when we'll be ready. But what we're looking for tonight is an indication as to your availability on these days.
If I recall correctly, the applicant made a strong plea that we get this done, and I think that was a very reasonable request. So I would just suggest that we pick as early as possible that date. And as I said before, I'm very sorry, but I did make a prior commitment to 10/17 some time ago.
Okay.
So, I don't have my calendar in front of me, but I do believe that the 4th and the 11th were both fine for me. Was 10/4 one of the dates?
Okay, so we would have a meeting on October 10th. Commissioners, we would end up having a meeting on October 10th, and then here, the Linda Avenue on October 11th, which is the day after.
Thank you.
Is that isn't that nice the way I explained it? Well, I just wanted you to know you'd be doing 2, yes.
Does that mean the meeting on the 20th, they would not be on the 26th?
Yes.
You would then push them back?
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Rice, you have a question in your mind.
Well, my question is, are we not done with the public testimony on that, with the exception of that arborist report that we got?
we're finished with the public testimony, I believe, except for the narrow area. However go ahead, Mr.
Right,
Suda.
and the chair is correct. You're done with public testimony except for the purpose of receiving the evidence or response from the applicant on the environmental report that the neighborhood group submitted, and then also staff's response to that same report, and also staff's reanalysis of the flood issue. Then the commission needs to deliberate on both the environmental portion of the project and the site and architecture.
What does the agenda look like for that evening?
That's what I was getting at. What's the agenda
Commissioner
look?
Rice?
Well, I was going to ask the same thing. Is the agenda pretty packed on the 26th that we don't think we can?
This information will not be ready on the 26th.
What about the 10th?
Different issue.
What about the 10th?
We're hoping.
Well, if you're going to do it on the 11th, it's got to be ready by the 10th. I mean, a day shouldn't make
What
that.
does our agenda on the 10th look like?
You have 275 Los Gatos Saratoga Road.
Oh, that's
That's the old Chevron site.
Yeah,
Right.
Saul.
You have the architecture and site for 15200 Los Gatos Boulevard, which is the old Flames Restaurant site. That's coming back to you. And you have Mariposa, potentially.
Yeah.
Are you free on the 11th?
I can do the 11th. My preference, quite frankly, would be to. I don't time them. I don't know how long those things will take, but
Let me ask you a question. And maybe this answers itself. What I was going to say is, if you set it for the 10th, with the understanding that if it didn't appear we would get to it, we'd roll it over to the 11th, at least you'd have the opportunity. But maybe that's too inconvenient to the neighbors and the applicant. From our standpoint, it would be more convenient, I would think, but I'm not trying to be inconvenient to the neighbors and the applicant.
And also people on the 10th.
If you could indicate if you're on the 11th, that gives us 2 more weeks to flesh out whether we will be ready on the 11th one, and 2, whether these 2 other items are going to stick on the agenda for the 10th. If within the next 2 weeks one of these other items falls off the 10th,
Right.
then we can put Linda back on the 10th.
So what is currently on the 10th, though? You mentioned all the projects.
3 items.
Aren't those on the 26th, though?
No, those are on the 10th.
Oh, I see. Got it.
I don't understand this, if we are ready. What is it that you have in mind that would suggest to you that you would not be ready by October 11th?
We have not seen the commentary and response from the town's biologist and the town's environmental consultant at this time. They've begun to work on that. We had a meeting out on the site with Regional Water Quality Control Board, Fish and Game, town's biologist, town's environmental consultant, and that was last week, I believe. So that started the process of the response. We wanted to make sure we fully understood, once again, the requirements from these regional agencies.
Well, I'm just wondering if there shouldn't be some date that everybody says that's the date, because otherwise the applicant says, what? When you're ready, you'll let us know? I mean, it just doesn't sound reasonable to me. We had this meeting some time ago, whenever it was. We're now talking about kicking it over another 2 weeks, and we're saying, that'll be great if we're ready. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean November? Does it mean December? Shouldn't we have a date certain? Can't we tell staff we want it done? I mean, I'm kind of taken aback by this because there's no deadline, and I don't understand that.
You could specify a deadline. You already have specified a date
the
certain, which is the next meeting, and I'm telling you, we are not ready. We would rather present information that has been vetted by the staff rather.
Are you telling me you're not going to be ready for October 11th?
that's what I was going to ask.
I do not know at this point.
So we're not even sure that date will stick. Is that what?
Yeah, I think you ought to come back to us and tell us when you think you might be ready to respond, and then we can tell the applicant what that is. This is kind of silly.
Well,
isn't it?
you will be telling the applicant on the 26th what date they are continued to. You will be giving them a date certain.
In the meantime, I need to keep a calendar so we can shoot for 10, 11.
So you're saying that they'll come back, this will come back on the 26th. We can then,
You continue
Continue
them
this.
to the 26th. a
right,
date
and
certain.
then we can continue them further if the application is not ready.
Right.
So do you think
Which
by
is
the 20...
what we
let me-
indicated when
yeah.
we set that date.
Right. So on the 26th, would you have a better picture that you'd be ready on the 11th?
26th, we will know.
Okay.
Let me just make this one comment. We have before us now a lot of evidence put in by everybody. There is no requirement that if the staff wants to take some indeterminate period of time to come in with something, that we have to wait for that. We can make a decision based on the evidence we have before us. And I guess my feeling is, if you come back and tell us you can't get it done by the 11th, I would suggest that we consider whether we want to continue it beyond the 11th. I know of no legal reason why we can't make a decision based on the evidence we have before us at that point. Now, I say that hoping that when, on the 26th, you're going to tell us you're ready on the 11th, but otherwise, it truly is the tail wagging the dog. You got an applicant, you got the people, they've all put their evidence in, and staff says, I respect what you're doing, but I'm just saying we ought to have justice delayed is justice denied, is some old canard we've all heard, but there's some truth to it. So I would suggest to us that we consider, if on the 26th we're told staff can't be ready on the 11th, we consider whether we want to wait.
Commissioner Rice.
My concern with that is we were told by council that we have to wait until that evidence that was presented is evaluated.
What
Town attorney.
I mean, I was going to say, the
Town
council.
Well,
Oh, town attorney.
him again, but to me, if you say to somebody, this is your hearing date, put your evidence in.
I agree with you, believe me. I agree with you. I'm just telling you my recollection of what Mr. Korb told us was until that stuff is evaluated, we can't act.
Yeah, let's ask him again. That's fine.
So
They'll come back, so
we'll make the decision on the 26th.
on the 26th, but just in your own minds and calendars, look at the 11th
We
of
listened to this
October.
applicant who said that they've spent, I think they said millions of dollars, and
Yes.
I'm not saying they should be approved, but I am saying I think it's fair to say they should get a decision.
Right. So we're going for it here. Any other comments on that? Okay, thank you. Does that clear it up at all? Right. I don't have any other commission matters. Does anyone else? Okay. So wait a minute, I wanted to get back to the meeting between the Planning Commission and the Town Council. October 17th will not work.
For two of us,
For
at
two
least.
of
I
us.
don't know about Commissioner Machici or
Exactly.
Commissioner Bourgeois.
But I really think if we could try for another date, it's very valuable that we are all present. So,
Well, of those dates that you threw out for the potential hearing on,
yes?
both the 23rd and the 25th work for me.
Okay. Why don't we take that to the mayor and the town manager? They don't work,
No, they don't, no.
Neither one of them?
No, I may be in Vegas, so if I have to go to a Schwab convention, I don't want to miss it. But I haven't nailed it down yet. Tough to get.
can, you know what, excuse me, can the mayor perhaps give us 2 or 3 dates via email, and then we can look at those? Would that be? Okay, thank you. So let's do that, we'll suggest that.
I'll give my calendar to the chair so you know what I'm doing.
Okay, thank you. I thought what happened, it never. I have nothing further. Commissioner Rice.
Well, on the agenda is the discussion of the modifications to the staff report format.
Oh, thank you for bringing that up. It's already in my head, I had dismissed it. What I would like to do, if you don't mind, I would like to do that when we have a full commission.
Totally cool by me?
Is that all right with you?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so I'm hoping that'll happen next time, all right, at our next meeting. Thank you. All right, thank you. And with that, if there's nothing further, I adjourn the meeting.
You dismiss us?
I can.